With the graphite transfer process, it's similar to what we did before. So we've got our black and white taped down, aligned with the rectangle underneath. And then we now need to look at the contour lines, right? Depending on the shapes, you can see where there's changes in values, highlights, midtones, shadows, reflected light, okay, and a lot of subtle changes. The graphite transfer part is going to be transferred onto the paper. So what we're using is the graphite transfer paper, also known as Cerl paper. Now the Cerl paper is reusable. It's got a lighter side and a darker gray side. The darker gray side is the side that has graphite on it. So if you look, if you touch it, you can kind of get a little bit of graphite on your thumb, but it'll allow us, and you can see that there are other tracings that have been done on this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to slide this under, and it's just wide enough, you'll notice. It's wide enough that it will cover the area of the legs. All right. So I'm going to have my project hinged down. I'm going to slide my Cerl paper underneath, and then I'm just going to trace the contour lines. I don't need to press too hard. I just need to give it a little bit of pressure right along the edge of the values, so that what I end up with is, and you can see, a transferred light line. All right, I don't need anything too dark. I just want a light line, so that shows the edges of separation in the values of the pant leg. So you've got to trace around all of those shapes, just like we drew them when we did the rag. This is an extension of that fabric, visually understanding the values. You can see right along here I've got a transition from a darker value to a mid value, and then back into other mid values. So there's variations in here. I don't have to trace all of those because I can recognize differences in tone when I start in with the color. But I do need to reference subtle creases. Like this is a subtle crease right here. I've got a little bit of a subtle crease right there. That's a fairly significant edge of separation. So if you look, all right, you end up getting a smooth transfer of the values. All right, continue that process for all of the fabric on the legs, and you'll notice I'm not outlining anything where creases kind of come in and change direction. I'm keeping them kind of loose. So right along here there's just a broken edge of separation, and these I can see are just going to be directional shading. All right, but everything else, just look for the contours. Trace the shapes, carefully look for overlap. Now when you get to the shoes, you really got to focus in. Alright, you can see some of that secondary dirt, that can be from where my fingers were pressing down on it. I can erase that later on. I also want to check to make sure that I have every area of the pants before I move on to the shoes. Now with the shoes, what you don't want to do is you don't want to trace the laces as lines. Alright, look at everything as a series of shapes. So obviously it's a little bit darker, there's a dark gray on the shoes, but I can see that I've got the stitches in there, I've got some shadows. So look at all of it first as areas of shape. I got areas of shape, so I'm going to look at the shoes as areas of shape. So light shape against dark shape. When you get to the laces themselves, make those shapes also. For example, if I do the laces, I can see that there's an area of white and then an area of this lace that overlaps. look for the contours and the creases in the laces, as well as if you look closely right here, all right, you can see a little bit of a shadow. So there's a contour edge of separation right there. All right. So make sure that the edges of separation and the shapes are all drawn in, as well as the side panels of the shoe, the shapes inside. That's going to be a dark, that's going to be a dark, so that when I go to color the shoe, right, I'm looking at the shapes created by the shoe and not just a line that defines, you know, each part. I'll have edges of separation created because I'm tracing all of the shapes. And that gives me my finished contour line drawing, which now I'm going to go back in and clean up the fingerprints around the outside with an eraser. And I'll get ready to practice. I'm going to need this again. I'm going to need this again when I do a color test. That would be the next demo.